Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called A Third Option, written by 3 ducks in a man-suit. Above, it was in the light, hard-baked into the holy radiance flowing perpetually from the almighty Creator. Beyond the great veil, Camille could feel the time to imminent. All angels could. The Orcs that led them sang the praise of the Lord, bathed in the glowing pillars that blessed them. Their song changed. The time for praising the Lord was over. The time for action in his name had come. The host armed itself. 1,000,000 angels cheered as the vanguard took up their weapons, blessed devices of righteous fury that would smite the ancient foe. Blindly, the ancients stood as one. The Orcs of the head and heart, the angels as the arms, and the eyes and their ears. Camille drifted in with the flow, reveling with her brothers and sisters, brandishing her sword and bearing enraptured witness to the glorious sight of its light mixing with that of the host. It was time for heaven to descend. Below, the master awakened. His rousing had been slow, with every creeping second that heralded the end of his 10,000-year slumber. The fires of hell burned just that much stronger. The demons felt their blood boil that much hotter. Twisted forms of flame and shadow danced around his resting place as the magnificent form of the Prince of Darkness stood tall, his arms raised high, and clutched within it was the mighty sword of Lucifer. Naberius felt the agony of the hell roll over him and let his eyes roll back, relishing the ecstasy. The demons screeched at the burning air and pure excitement as Morning Star ravaged the barrier between worlds, bridging the gap and directing the legions of hell to pour through. The challenge had been issued. Hell was going to war. Between. The operator on shift double-checked the readings, then checked them again. He called his superior to verify the signals coming from above and below, orbital satellites and subterranean sensors simultaneously registering movement converging on the desert edge. There was no doubt. The supervisor picked up the red phone. Moments later, a man in a much fancier uniform nodded his head with a grim expression and turned to the button, the big red one. He flipped the plastic cover, exposing the button and the post-it note someone had snapped onto it long ago. 4 words in big capitalized letters, in case of apocalypse. He pressed it, and the alarms began. The 2 armies met on a barren landscape, sand and rock as far as anyone could see. Human habitations only a stone throw away. Undoubtedly the first of many to be caught in the crossfire. Unfortunate, thought the angels, but their souls would be in their care of God. Delightful, thought the demons, their souls would be delicious. The heavenly host and the infernal legions came from above and below to meet on the sands of the mortal plane. The lines were drawn up. Archangels came eye to eye with the demonic generals. Lucifer and Michael, the respective commanders of the 2 armies, each waited for the other, not willing to give up the element of surprise. Closer they drew, righteous fury meeting insatiable bloodlust. But before the lines could meet, the sound. A strange sound, an alien sound, a buzzing in the air, a drone like that of an earthly insect, but magnified greatly. Then the whistle, the unquestionable noise of something descending with great haste. Angels and demons alike turned with faces of trepidation to the sky to witness the great shape moving above them now they were earthbound. Several angelic hands came together in prayer. Was this a descent? Was the Heavenly Father himself showing his face upon the earth for the first time since the Genesis to end the senseless war of his creations? The demons roared in response, shouting the defiance that had seen them cast into hell. Both armies were still staring stupidly at the sky when the first daisy cutter landed. General Randall wasn't big on screens. A streak of traditionalism ran through him that demanded to see the action with his own eyes if at all possible. That was why, when Operation Apocalypse never had gone into action, he had insisted on having a front row seat at the mobile command center, viewing the scene through binoculars. He couldn't keep away the tiny grin of satisfaction as the great supernatural armies were welcomed to Earth with a rave of good old-fashioned, fiery made-in-America death and destruction, courtesy of the International Forward Monitoring Base position at the anticipated meeting points between the Hellmouth and the gates of heaven. He couldn't hear the screaming of demons and angels over more dominant explosions and angry droning of the A-10s moving in to mop up the unfortunate stragglers. but he liked to imagine the chorus of pathetic whining and begging for mommy. Likewise, he had largely lost sight of them in the titanic clouds of dust and debris kicked up by some of the biggest bombs known to man. But he could largely guess what lay at the core was now mostly a significant quantity of wings, claws, scales, and other bits of divine and infernal body parts flying through the air in a messy paste. He grabbed his radio. "All right, that'll do for the bombing. Keep the A-10s in orbit around the kill box. Send in the back, Orcs. Let's get some boots on the ground. Time to meet our makers." Camille had been disappointed to find herself positioned at the back of the vanguard. There would be no glory to be had here. The battle might be largely over by the time her sword was allowed to taste demon blood. Oh well, there would be many chances in a war that followed. Her position had been the only thing to save her when the bulk of the army had been blown to giblets by an unknown force. Her feet hadn't even touched down when a blast of superheated air sent her careening head over heels, wings useless and limbs flung about, herself out of control. Her sword was torn from her grip. She felt herself collide with brothers and sisters in similar disarray. Finally, she landed on a hot sand, arms twisted at an angle she didn't like, and pain surging through every corner of her body. Her eardrums had been shattered by an ungodly noise. The holy light quickly repaired the damage. She came to regret that as desperate screaming of thunderous brrrt noise dominated the air. She couldn't see. Dust filled her vision. She tried to stand, feeling her mulched bones knit themselves back together, and the burning flesh sloughing off her quickly growing back. The light within her doing its job. Then the corpse of one of her brothers, parts of it torn by some ferocious attack, landed on her from above, pinning her to the earth. With little else she could do, she took a deep breath and added her voice to the chorus of screams. The agony of hell was a joke. The constant burning fires of the abyss were a pleasant tickle. The cruel whips and the punishers that enforced the will of the morning star were a loving caress. Multiple colors of blood were caked onto Naburius's ravaged skin, mixing with the sand of the desert. A line of projectiles had torn across the landscape. Every demon they met was turned into a red mist. A single metal object, moving faster than the eye could see, had clipped his shoulder, and his entire arm had been ripped off as if the Dark Lord himself had struck him down. It was a miracle he was still alive. Now he could only crawl away from the carnage and whimper, wondering what had happened here. As the explosions died down, a new noise dominated the dust bowl, a rapid whop-whop-whop sound coming from somewhere above. The already stormy sand blew up even more furiously as a cool, almost forgiving wind brushed the demonic general's back. He wondered briefly if God was descending after all. Was he about to be granted clemency for his heresy, or just a quick mercy of a quick erasure from creation? He could hear more noises now, like the rattling explosions that heralded the metal projectiles, but smaller, more numerous, and closer. He felt footsteps by his head. Then a boot shoved him over onto his back. Facing up, he finally could see the architects of fate for both heaven and hell on this day. It was a squad of camouflage-clad humans wielding wicked-looking angular metal devices, all pointed at his face. As one of them whipped out a pair of metal restraints, glad to have found a living captive, another lowered the cloth that covered his mouth to reveal a smile. With his gift of tongues, Naburius understood his words perfectly. "Welcome to Earth." End of story. I'd quickly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholt, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.